Can we get a thumbs up when that's happening?
All right, we are live. Got a notice it'll be sent to a third party. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Equity, Accessibility, and Stakeholder Engagement Technical Meeting number 1. My name is Michelle Vegan-Ralston. I'm with Common Spark Consulting, part of the EASE consultant team working with PURA on this docket. We are excited about having you here today. And let's move forward in the slides to what we have in store. We're going to do a quick welcome and introductions, make sure you know who's in the room, and a very rapid icebreaker activity. Let's go ahead, next slide. The purpose for today is to briefly learn about PURA's role, responsibilities, and current processes, and why PURA has opened this docket and their intentions around expanding access. We'll learn about the highlights and input gathered from public meeting number 1, which was on March 20th in Hartford. And then we have 3 presentations today. We're really excited to have Europa Consulting talking about some of their outreach and engagement survey findings related to engaging with PURA, discuss the Nonprofit Accountability Group's outreach and engagement series findings. They have also been doing work specific to this topic. And then our consultant team has also done a preliminary assessment of processes and policies, and we'll share with you some of those top-level findings. We'll have, excuse me, a couple opportunities throughout the session today to provide input to inform this process moving forward. Next slide. Today's agenda, as I mentioned, we'll have just a short presentation. If you were at public meeting number 1, this overview will sound remarkably familiar. This will cover a little bit about PURA and their processes. We'll take a round of public comment. We'll invite folks if they want to share anything. We do have both PURA staff and Chair Gillette with us today. Thank you so much for being here. And then we'll move into a series of presentations from Europa, the Nonprofit Accountability Group, and the consultant team. We'll continue to open up opportunities for participant discussion, clarifying questions from those presentations, but also a broader discussion following all 3 presentations. Next slide. A couple notes about how to participate. Please know that closed captioning is available. If you're like me, I tend to retain information better when I hear it and see the words, so I welcome you to find the right mix of ways to participate. If you are interested in speaking during public comment, we invite you to raise your hand in Zoom. This allows us to build a queue. If you are having any difficulty raising your hand, go ahead and put a note in the chat, and the facilitation team will make a note to make sure that you are added to the queue. Of course, we're all pretty used to this now, but if you are not speaking, it is a courtesy and a convenience to be on mute so that we can hear those who are speaking. Please note that your comments, input, and discussions today, our entire consultant team is here, and we look forward to including all of those thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and questions into the equity, accessibility, and stakeholder engagement strategy that we will be developing towards the end of this process. And we'll share more about that later today. Next slide. Some quick introductions. I'm going to ask each of these folks to come off camera as they are able and just give a wave, but we have Danielle Chalot, she's research assistant, Julia Dumaine, supervisor of strategy and operations, and Elizabeth Tanaka, staff attorney. This has been the team that has been just very excited and thoughtful and providing a lot of great information to help guide these inquiries and opportunities to improve access in PURA dockets. Our consultant team, you've probably received several communications from Suhaila Sekin with Common Spark Consulting. There's myself, hello. Tanya Poslowski is with Elevated Engagement. She's not feeling her best due to COVID, but she is here today listening in and taking in all the information. We also have Lauren McNutt and Reagan Bond from Dunsky Climate and Energy, and that is our consultant team. Next slide. If you want to know a little bit more about each of us, here are all of our kind of logos. We can drop in information, but what we bring is an overlapping set of knowledge on the regulated energy sector and commission processes. We work with other commissions across the United States and have a chance to better understand what works well in different scenarios versus others. We also have a strong background and experience in procedural equity and inclusive stakeholder engagement. And we also bring a background and experience in strategic planning and facilitation. Next slide. Whew. All right. Were we going to do an icebreaker, Suhaila?
No, we were not.
Okay. We're going to move into a rapid fire conversation, quick presentation about PURA. As I mentioned, if you're at the public meeting #1, this will sound quite familiar, and I'm going to move quickly, but please know that these slides are posted, and if you have any questions at all, we are more than happy to hear from you, answer any questions, or make sure you get to the right person to talk through any questions you might have. But first, to just kick us off, the Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, or for shorthand, PURA, their mission is to advance the state's energy, economic, and environmental goals and is critical to maintaining public health, safety, and a robust economy. Next slide. A little bit more about PURA. They are responsible to ensure that the utilities provide safe, clean, reliable, and affordable utility services and infrastructure. And when we say utilities, we're talking about the utilities that provide your electricity, your natural gas, your water, and your telecommunications. And when we say telecommunications, we're talking about the hardwire line, not your cell phone, but that landline that you might still have in your home. Next slide. PURA is a state agency. They are government. Their job is to interpret and enforce the laws that apply to Connecticut's utilities. Those laws are usually coming from the legislature. PURA provides the regulation to make sure that those laws are enforced and that the utilities are abiding by them. PURA is quasi-judicial. This means that they are like a court in that they conduct cases and they make legally binding decisions. But we say quasi because they're a little bit different than the court where you may go to fight a parking ticket or have another civil or criminal matter. Next slide. PURA interprets and applies rules to oversee all aspects of the utility sector. This means they do the work of setting utility rates, keeping the electric grid, gas pipelines, and water pipes up to date and safe. PURA also determines who can create, buy, and sell electricity and how they might do that, which is important because you don't want to be in a situation where people don't have the electricity or the gas that they need. PURA also provides education and outreach around the topics from which they regulate. Next slide. A little more about PURA and a little bit about why this docket. So to make its decisions, PURA opens formal spaces known as dockets, kind of like cases, to discuss specific issues. And they can only make decisions based on evidence in the docket record. And I know this can sound a little bit like, oh, that seems really hard or maybe exclusive. There's also a very good reason for that. We want to make sure that PURA is getting sound information from folks that are providing relevant data and that have a real connection to the issue. Next slide. To make the best decisions, PURA is exploring ways to bring more perspectives into this decision-making process. The hope is to make it easier for Connecticut ratepayers to share their expertise, lived experience, and ideas with PURA, since they are the folks that are enjoying the services from the utilities, but also may have challenges in receiving those services. Next slide. In short, PURA is responsible for making sure that energy, water, and phone services are provided safely and affordably. They want to do this through a process that is intended to be fair and transparent, and they want to, in this docket, find ways to also make this process more accessible to residents in Connecticut. Next slide. Now, in order to be fair and transparent, there happen to be a lot of rules that commissioners must follow to make decisions. They kind of fall into two general categories. One is how information is gathered and evaluated, And the second is who can present perspectives and information. Next slide. These rules are intended to make sure that commissioners get all the perspectives and information they need to make fair decisions. But we also know that some of these rules create complexity, which can make it hard for some perspectives to participate. And that gets in the way of commissioners getting all the information they need. Next slide. So the EASE docket, the Equity, Accessibility, and Stakeholder Engagement docket, was created to explore easier, meaningful, and more efficient stakeholder participation, to look at what might be getting in the way and what might be limiting effective stakeholder participation, what information can help customers better understand what PURA does, and are there key accessibility tools and services that PURA should offer? Next slide. In order to answer these questions in the docket, the consultant team was brought on board to help look at these very issues in the commission. I want to share a little bit about our scope of work so you understand what we will be doing and how and why we might be reaching out to you. The first is this preliminary assessment, which we'll be hearing from Lauren today. This was to review their public processes with an emphasis on barriers to and opportunities for engagement, particularly from underrepresented customers historically. Next slide. We're doing a process called Engage Discovery. We have been hosting focus groups and interviews from different individuals and organizations to better understand experiences related to participating in EASE dockets and looking at and understanding how EASE works. The hope is to further define the barriers and identify potential solutions to engaging in PURA proceedings. In addition to those focus groups and interviews, we are conducting 2 public meetings. The first one was March 20th in Hartford. The second one will be May 13th in New Haven. We'll have more information on that at the end of the meeting. And today is the first of 2 virtual technical meetings. Next slide. In all, after we've done all those interviews, focus groups, and meetings, we will be putting together a draft strategy, which will summarize activities, our findings from stakeholder feedback, contextual information, combined with our research and recommendations on approaches and methods to further equity, accessibility, and inclusion in proceedings. One note I want to add here is that PURA has a clear vision of where they want this to go. And they are also an organization that is also bound by certain obligations, rules, and responsibilities. The consultant team is looking for both aggressive ways to kind of re-envision ways of doing things, and at the same time, wanting to find very achievable next steps for PURA to consider taking on. Next slide. Lastly, is building resources to advance equity beyond this proceeding. This consultant team will be working with PURA over just the rest of this year, but we will not leave them empty-handed. We will be having outreach templates developed, checklists, and web content to expand engagement opportunities at PURA. We'll also be doing some in-organization training to build capacity with staff on specific inequities that might be present in regulatory processes and how to overcome them. Next slide. This is a little bit about how that timeline works. We are currently in Q2 at that beautiful little bright star. Notice that we are still in the focus group interview phase. So if you are interested and have additional ideas and things to say, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll make sure that you have a way to reach out to us after this meeting. From here, we'll be developing the strategy and doing the PURA staff capacity building. Next slide. And here I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Suhaila Sekund from Common Spark, to take us through an overview of public meeting number 1.
Thank you so much, Michelle. You can hear me, right? Perfect. So public meeting number 1, it was held on March 20th, 2025. We met at 6 p.m. at the Hartford Public Library. There's more information available at engagepura.org, and someone will be dropping that in the chat for you so you can easily access it. I'm going to give a very brief overview of what occurred at that meeting and what was learned. About 40 folks attended this meeting, and that was including nonprofits, community-based organizations, consultants, utilities, and government staff. This meeting, folks learned about PURA responsibilities and processes. That presentation that Michelle just gave to you, same exact one. Folks participated in activities to really share how much they want to engage with PURA and how they are or are not able to do so currently or historically, and what additional topics or what topics generally folks are interested in engaging and in participating in at PURA. We also discussed participant recommendations to increase abilities to engage with PURA generally. So we did a few activities. It's what I mentioned earlier. And one of these was this ranking exercise. We asked folks to rank how often they do or are able to engage, influence, or participate in PURA. And it looks like, as we can see on this image on the screen, that there's quite a few, a good amount of folks that do currently engage with PURA, and yet there's still a lot of folks that have some interest in engaging as well. We also did this other activity where we asked folks, another ranking one, how confident they felt engaging with PURA. And so as we can see here, there is quite a bit of confidence, and yet there's also some folks who might have some confidence engaging, but maybe would like some more confidence and more ways to engage and build up that confidence to engage and participate in PURA. We participants also highlighted the following topics of interest, just kind of broadly and generally. So those include bills, rates, affordability practices and processes, as well as their impacts, outreach and engagement about what PURA does, accessibility to access information. So that includes an easier website to navigate and to use, information about programs and services that reduce costs for customers. So similar to that, rates and affordability practices, distributional equity and justice and service of those programs and different services that are offered, as well as equity as a whole and kind of integrated and embedded throughout. And then folks were also interested in different workshops and forums in which folks can participate more thoroughly with PURA. Folks also discussed in groups, and some themes that came out of that is a really desire to be heard because these issues really affect people personally. And there was a desire to see those changes in the quality of life actually on the ground and with folks in homes, in communities, and businesses. Folks talked about reducing barriers to access PURA. So we talked a little bit about the website earlier, but also transportation, dissemination of information, how that information gets shared, workshops, public transcripts. You might see that we actually have someone here today that will be providing that as well. So we did hear you. And then also additional themes that came out were increasing that outreach and education. Again, updating the PURA website, that was a big one. A desire for PURA staff to really understand poverty, a diversification of PURA staff, and a desire to understand PURA processes and decision making. Oops. Michelle, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Suhaila. So now we're going to open up just one of many opportunities today just to hear from folks, especially those that maybe weren't at the first public meeting or those that were and have had some additional thoughts and ideas. If folks want to begin raising your hand on Zoom, we would love to have your voice come into the space to hear from you. We have a wonderful turnout today. This is not a hard limit, but we do hope that folks can be mindful that there may be other folks that want to have some time as well to speak. So I'll give folks a chance to get their hands raised. Any thoughts, comments, questions on what was presented? All right. I see Pam McDonald, and please introduce yourself and your affiliation or organization for our recorder today. Go ahead, Pam.
Sorry for the, I forgot to unmute. My name is Pam McDonald. I live in southeastern Connecticut in the village of Pawcatuck in Stonington. I'm affiliated with PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy, as it turns out. But personally, I wanted to say how much I appreciated Marissa Gillette's early explanations of how to engage with PURA. She did those video chats with people to say, hey, we need to hear from you. And I didn't know that until she did those little video things. So my sense is that not a lot of the world knows that still. I'd like more of the world to know that, but I don't know how to get that out. The other thing is I already learned something today, that my landline is under PURA's oversight. So, and we've had problems. So now I have a plan of action. So not too much edifying for this conversation, but I just wanted to let you know I appreciated what's been done.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate that. Other thoughts, comments, questions, perspectives? Well, go ahead, Deb, and don't forget to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Deborah. I also work with PACE, and I know we try and pay attention to the dockets. We find them sometimes very challenging to read, and I'm sorry, I don't know if this was brought up. I didn't attend the first meeting, but and I know there has to be some legal kinds of stuff, but if they could be more readable, so more people could understand them. And also the website is not user friendly. It's yeah, just not good. I think that was what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Deb. Appreciate that comment on if there's ways to make the language more accessible for folks. And also, I think, yeah, you just need to mention website. There's a number of issues that come up for folks when we start talking about the website. And trust me, PURA staff are well aware, and we are excited to look for solutions. Next, I see Joanna.
Hi, I am Joanna Iovino. I am a resident of Hartford, have been for about 14 years now, 13, 14 years now. I recently participated in the nonprofit accountability group's program about PURA, and it was like very, very mind-opening for me because I really didn't know anything about PURA before. So I would just recommend, like I spoke to some of the consultants, and I would just recommend getting more everyday people involved and having resident liaisons or resident advocates involved at all stages of the process and any decision making that PURA does, because I think being able to talk to your neighbor and someone who you trust and know about what PURA is doing and what they're not doing or what you think they could do is vital, because I think people are much more likely to open up to people who they already know, people who are their neighbors, people who they know from their kids' school or they know from their job or something, than to call a consultant and make an appointment and everything. So I think it would be vital to have some kind of citizen committee or like a resident board or something to do outreach to the community about accessibility and about the different things that are going on in the community.
Thank you, Joanna. I really, really love that comment about working with those you trust already in your community, in your neighborhood. And I take no offense to the random consultant. We were actually just in a conversation yesterday about random consultants not really being effective at doing deep community engagement and hearing from folks, because that trust isn't there, understandably. Thank you so much for your comment. Jameson.
Thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Awesome, great. So I just want to take a quick second to advocate and talk about the importance of the compensation fund. My name is Jameson Davis with Righting Wrongs. I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Mitchell and Attorney Jennings, working with NAG members, Nonprofit Accountability Group. Joanna is one of our members. Thank you for joining for speaking. Love hearing your voice as always. But I just wanted to talk about the importance of the compensation fund, to really talk about some of the things that Joanna mentioned in terms of what we were able to provide for the community in terms of education for PURA, and giving them a platform and ability to become part of the docket, which we know is, or the record, I should say, which you know is so important because that's how PURA makes its decisions with things on record. So the compensation fund really allowed us to be able to provide members with a comprehensive understanding of how the regulatory process really has an effect on their quality of life. And that's extremely important, especially for those who are on the ground level and front lines, who are facing energy burdens and taking on the brunt of energy poverty. And so I just wanted to take a quick second, not a lot of time, and just again advocate for the compensation fund and thank PURA and Commissioner Gillette for creating such an avenue, an important avenue to be able to make sure there's accessibility for community members.
Thank you so much, Jameson. And perhaps we can put a link into the chat if folks are interested in just learning more about that program. Other thoughts, comments, questions, ideas? I'm seeing also some +1s and some clapping emojis as different folks have been making comments. Cynthia.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Cynthia Jennings, and I'm also working with NAG. And I'm really, really impressed with Commissioner Gillette's approach to reaching out to the communities that are low-income communities and generally not included in the process. I've learned a ton of information about the entire process working with NAG and Dr. Mitchell, and it's just been an experience that I think that we all need to know about. What's the most important thing that I thought we covered was the fact that if the information is not in the record, it will not be considered. And therefore, I support Commissioner Gillette's approach to reaching out to everyone so that their positions and their concerns can be addressed.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, that's an important piece of information, and knowing like how to get your information and how to participate in those official ways, at least as the rules stand, to make sure that folks feel like, yes, my information will be included and considered and influencing in part of this decision making. Very important. Any additional thoughts, comments, questions, ideas? Camille?
Hello, everyone. Hold on. Let's see. Hello, everyone. I just want to piggyback off of
can you provide just a quick introduction of yourself for our recorder?
yes. So sorry. My name is Camille Thomas. I am a Hartford resident, and I'm also affiliated with the nonprofit accountability group. I did want to just piggyback off of my fellow members who are part of the NAG accountability group, and the things that has been opened through this last docket, the stakeholder group compensation program, has been has been really eye-opening for me. I would say that I am like well-versed on national politics, international politics, local politics, everything. But I had no idea about this. And it was almost as if I was like I was walking and then found out that there was like an underground tunnel that was there the whole entire time. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to actually learn and engage and contribute and have my voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille. Yes, it's been here the whole time, right under our noses, our utility commission. I see Matt. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Matt Hellman. I'm the Director of Social Services in Vernon, and I'm also the President of CLASS, the Connecticut Local Administrators of Social Services. So CLASS, made up of the municipal social and human services staff who do the energy applications for our residents, the SEEP applications. And then we're also communicating with the utilities about the different programs that the residents may qualify for as far as discounts. So we have a long history of that, but we're new to PURA. So we just filed for participant status recently, both on this docket and 250501, which is the utility discounts. And that wouldn't have even happened but for the recommendation from Gannon Long at Op Fuel. So shout out to Gannon, who I see on the call. But it totally makes sense now that we're aware of it. So we are really looking forward to participating and bringing some of the stories and experiences that we see on an everyday basis when we sit down with clients who are oftentimes just confused about what they're eligible for, what they're already getting, what they got last year, but they're not getting this year. It's just really, I mean, they're just trying to live day to day and to try and keep up with the technical requirements. I mean, that's our job, but it's difficult for them. So we look forward to bringing their point of view to this group as well as the other docket.
Thank you so much, Matt, and really looking forward to having your perspectives included in dockets moving forward. Other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, ideas? And I'll make a note. Suhaila has put a link into the chat. If you are interested in scheduling some time, or you think it would be useful for us to sit down with your organization, or if you have a group of folks that you're organizing with, we are more than happy to come to you at a time that works for you. So please reach out. The link is in there, and one of us will definitely get back to you. And I'm also just seeing some really nice appreciations and shout outs in the chat as well. Great. Last call for thoughts, comments, questions. All right. Well, I think then I'll pass it back to Suhaila, and we'll get started with our presentations for today.
Thank you, Michelle. So right now we are going to move into a presentation by Aropa Consulting. I want to introduce Roz, who is a seasoned nonprofit operations expert with about 20 years of experience building operational and technical infrastructure for global and local social impact organizations. Her work has included building equitable frameworks in technology, strategy, operations, and products and fundraising. She founded Aropa Consulting in 2022 to bring equity-based and human-centered approaches to social impact consulting. With a master's in law and diplomacy and a bachelor's in economic and mathematics and fieldwork in over 10 countries, Roz brings a diverse, multidisciplinary approach to her work. ensuring that organizations remain true to their mission with their organizational and operational structures. So with that, I'm going to have Roz come off mute and take us through her presentation.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. As Suhaila mentioned, my name is Roz Zavris. We were able to do an initial stakeholder engagement focusing on small businesses and nonprofits, especially in the greater New Haven region. And this is a presentation of our initial findings. We plan to do, and I'll discuss this more at the end, further stakeholder engagement after this meeting and deepening our analysis on many fronts. So we were able in a very short amount of time, and by short amount of time, I mean a week, receive 39 responses to our survey from nonprofits and small businesses. Like I said, within the greater New Haven area, we are based in New Haven, just so that you know. And so this, I think, represents a really strong desire to continue to engage with PURA and this topic. So it was a vast majority of small businesses, 31, with 8 or 21% respondents being nonprofits. And so in general, there's a large interest in engaging with PURA. 56% of the respondents said that 10 out of 10, they really want to engage in PURA with PURA proceedings. And that 90% are willing to attend a meeting in some vein, whether that's in person or virtual. There was this, I think, as other individuals already mentioned during the public comment section, this, oh, wow, we have the ability to actually engage with these topics with the regulatory authority to hopefully make a difference. Small businesses and nonprofit leaders across the board were ready and willing to engage. It's slightly higher on the small business side than the nonprofits, and we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper during some of our focus groups and interviews. But considering our background in nonprofit work, a large portion of that I can assume is about time, right? Nonprofits are generally pretty strapped by time. They're led by folks that could be volunteers or have large volunteer staff. So there's slightly stronger engagement, desire for engagement on the small business side, and we'll begin to tease that out more in follow-up conversations. And so this also was really interesting, and I wanted to have it be its own slide because folks were really excited to engage with PURA and say, okay, great, we're ready to go. But over, 40% of folks said, this is the first time I even heard through this survey that this is a possibility. And so, in a short series of questions, our respondents went from not knowing much about PURA or knowing that PURA holds public meetings to saying, now that I know that this is a possibility, I'm excited and ready to engage. And I think that was also, like I said, mirrored in some of the public comments. And so one of the things that we're really interested in analyzing is for the folks that did know that this was a possibility, how they found out and how we can increase that knowledge, especially within the small business and community and the community within Greater New Haven. Because again, for folks that live in New Haven, sometimes there's a perception of, well, these things happen in Hartford. It's not really something that those of us on the shoreline can potentially engage with. And so for the team, for the group that filled this out, they were equally interested in electricity and telecom, interestingly enough. That was neck and neck. So one person wrote in oil. We understand that PURA actually doesn't regulate oil, but there was an other space. So that's how that snuck in. But I think that also indicates just really a desire for understanding more about what are the industries, what are the utilities that PURA does regulate, and how can these organizations engage in this conversation. So there was a slight preference for engaging more around topics around electricity for the nonprofits. And again, we're really excited to understand that a little bit more, where that difference came from between the nonprofits and the small businesses. And so this is really what we're interested, right, in phase 2 of getting to understand more. What are our barriers and how can we address these barriers moving forward? Lack of time, it's very difficult to address lack of time, but we can understand our meetings better if they're after work. How can we support folks getting to these meetings a little bit more? Really excited that the next public meeting is going to be in New Haven, because then again, we can also talk about moving things always out of Hartford or in the Hartford region and how we can get to the rest of the state. Because for instance, I know some of my colleagues in New London are also often thinking, well, New London is all the way out there, and no one really, it's hard for them to engage as well. Transportation, right? This is a common obstacle, and it can be really difficult to get around the state if you do not have a car. But how we can mitigate that, staying on bus routes and moving around the state, again, really excited to know more about that, and not knowing how to get involved, right? So it was exciting that this survey intrigued a lot of our survey respondents, that by filling this out, they were saying, okay, I know that I can get involved now and I want to get involved, but the question of how. And I think also, as mentioned earlier, the stakeholder engagement process can feel a bit obscure, right? So it's a great way to engage. It's a great way for organizations, especially ones that serve large stakeholders, to be able to be a part of the docket. And so helping spread information about that and understanding how to make that accessible is going to be one of the things we want to learn more on. And then, again, to start to answer that question, folks are really enjoying online meetings these days, even though I think a lot of us probably have Zoom fatigue. There is still an overwhelming desire for virtual engagement. And I think that highlights, right, the geographic diversity of the state, as well as just needing flexibility in people's schedules. So, convenient times, evenings or weekends, that came up quite a bit. And then communication materials. So we've talked about the website. I've also heard a lot about, we did ask one question, which I don't think we have in this presentation. How would you like to receive this information? A large amount of people, a vast majority, said email. Which I also thought was interesting, assuming that most people would want to engage on social media, but no, they're actually interested in, clear, concise emails saying how they can engage, what are the next meetings, and things like that. I even mentioned in the public meeting that you go to the website and you try to sign up, PURA's website, and you try to sign up for a newsletter, and it can take you to a broken link. So just simple clearing up those processes, making sure that those links work, that it's easy to engage, to get that kind of clear, simple communication is important for our group. And so, yeah, these are some of our initial takeaways. There is really excited about the deep interest, especially with businesses and nonprofits, to engage on these topics and to understand that they can be a part of this decision-making process. And really, we're trying to understand next, what are the barriers to that engagement, how things can feel more accessible to them, and what we can bring to the next meeting around those ideas. One thing that I also didn't have a slide on, but I do want to mention is around accessibility, is we had a huge interest in of the folks that had language concerns. It was actually deaf and hard of hearing was the largest request. Then Spanish was actually next. So one thing to think about, and this came up even during the public meeting, is there were a couple moments when someone didn't actually have the microphone in their hands, which although many of us can can project, making sure that we're always thinking of our deaf and hard of hearing colleagues throughout these meetings, adding captions and potentially having access to sign language if necessary. So I did want to flag that as a concern because it did come up with about a handful of our respondents as well. And then finally, continuing to educate nonprofits and small businesses how they can engage with PURA. Like I said, the huge desire for simple, straightforward communication direct to inbox about what's next. And finally, our next steps and our plan is to do potentially another larger survey, but really we're interested in doing more interviews and focus groups. We're deeply connected with the small business and nonprofit communities in the region. And so we're going to, from our initial interview, fill out folks that would be interested in focus groups. We'll also be having more meetings with entrepreneurial serving organizations in the greater New Haven region to, again, get deeper interviews and focus groups on how we can build greater engagement with PURA moving forward. So if I don't know if there's time for questions or if anybody has any questions on our presentation, but I was trying to be quick.
Thank you so much, Roz. I see a question. We have a few moments available for questions and discussion on Aropa Consulting on Roz's presentation. I see Pam's hand is raised.
So I'm not being shy. Roz, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for the conclusion about, getting those direct emails out. I think that's all good. While you were talking, I decided, okay, let's see what I can find on Facebook. So I put in PURA Connecticut on Facebook, and I get all these anti-Marissa Gillette posts. That's what shows up. And so what I would like to see there is a little video of what PURA does and how it requires information from citizens to make, to fill out what it needs to make decisions. I think so many people don't know that, even though I've been spreading the word as much as I can. And I don't know if, posting on Facebook is an alternative, but I think it's so many people get their information from Facebook and other kinds of media like that. Yikes. I would like to empower people, and that might be helpful to empower people.
Thank you, Pam. I was also really interested in the fact that so few of our respondents noted that they were interested in getting more information on social media. So it's definitely going to be a question that we'll tease out more in our focus groups and our stakeholder interviews, because you're right, so many people are getting information off Facebook. So that disconnect was surprising for me, to be honest.
I want to note in the chat that Gannon has said, in my experience, most of PURA's meetings are online. Thank you, Gannon. If you want to elaborate on that, we also welcome you to do so.
Thank you. It's Gannon from Operation Fuel. I didn't really mean to elaborate, but I guess just hearing that people consider transportation to be a barrier, which I totally understand, and it's one for me in a lot of areas as well. But it is worth noting that, and maybe I'm wrong about that. Just my experience is not comprehensive by any means, but most of the meetings that I go to at PURA, it's rare that I go there in person. Most of them are virtual, so maybe that's something that in the messaging and the communications, maybe something to make a little bit more clear to folks that are interested in engaging.
I would agree. I think it's a perception issue more than there actually, there are all these online meetings, but for some reason folks don't think they're online. And I'm not sure why that is, but.
Yeah. And this, I think it was 6% or something that said they didn't have a clear understanding of the process, which regardless of the results of the survey, I would probably assume is a much higher percentage than 6%. Again, that just kind of stuck out to me because, you know, if you're not again, most of their meetings are online. So if a lot of people are like, oh, I can't make it, they can't get to the meeting because of transportation, it's like, well, maybe there's a higher, I think we should just assume that that's built in, that a lot of people, again, as somebody who spends time in this space, there's a lot that I also don't understand about the process. So I think that's just worth noting and maybe building in as we're kind of thinking about how to reach out to people.
That question was actually top barrier. So it was choose one, I think, for that question. So I think that's why it became 6%.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Any other questions, discussion topics, or things that y'all, reactions to what what Roz presented? I see a Kendall came off mute. Did you want to speak? I believe that Kendall's audio is not connected at this point, so that's probably why I made that assumption. I'm gonna give it a few moments if others have questions, reactions, comments. I'm taking it that we don't have any, so I'm gonna move us forward. Thank you, Roz, so much for this presentation and for sharing a little bit about your engagement with the New Haven communities, nonprofits, as well as small businesses. We're looking forward to learning more about your engagement strategy as it moves forward. And I believe with that, we actually are scheduled for a short break. And I believe we have about 5 minutes for that. I'm just going to quickly double check with Michelle on the fly since we're ahead of schedule.
Do you want to do
Does that
5?
sound?
Yeah. A
Yeah.
breakdown. Good. Yeah.
We'll take a 5-minute break. So we will come back at 1:31, a little bit odd of a time. Feel free to stay in the meeting and turn your cameras or mics off, or you may exit and re-come back. Thank you so much. Robin, I don't know if you want to pause. Totally up to you. I don't know with the broadcasting how that would work. Welcome back, folks. As you come back, if you can indicate that we have you here, maybe put a note in the chat, turn on your video, react with the react button. That would be great. I see some waves. I see some thumbs ups and claps. Just want to make sure we have a majority of folks back before we get started again. Awesome, seeing more folks coming back online. Give it another moment or two to welcome folks back into our meeting after a break. All right, thank you everybody. We are back after a brief break. Next up, we have a presentation from the Nonprofit Accountability Group. And we have Dr. Mark Mitchell, who will be presenting. Mark is an emeritus professor of climate change, energy, and environmental health equity at the George Mason University. He is also co-chairs of Connecticut's Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Dr. Mitchell has spent over 20 years working in the public health sector, including as a director of health for the city of Hartford, and 30 years working with environmental justice communities to prevent and reduce environmentally related diseases and exposure to toxic chemicals. He is the founder and senior policy advisor for the Connecticut Coalition for Environmental Justice. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Mark Mitchell to hop off mute and take us through the next set of slides.
Thank you so much. I first want to thank PURA for having this docket, and particularly Chair Gillette for reaching out to low-income communities and environmental justice groups throughout Connecticut to let us know that we can participate in the PURA docket. These are photos of some of our of one of our trainings, and we have more photos afterwards. But I'd like to start off talking about giving an overview of our next slide, please. Let's see. Yeah, overview of our presentation. And so we'll start off talking about the Nonprofit Accountability Group, then a description of our workshops to engage Nonprofit Accountability Group members. We'll talk a little bit about the demographics of the members who participated in the workshop. And we'll describe a lot of the types of recommendations that we made. We will not have time to go over all of the recommendations, but we will go over the recommendations for social media. We came up with maybe 50 or so recommendations. So we're not going to have time to go through them in a 10-minute presentation. But we will present more detailed recommendations in our full report and upon request. And we'll put our full report on the website. So next,
Apologies for that. I don't know what's happening here. There we go.
Okay, so the Nonprofit Accountability Group is an organization of low wealth activists in Hartford, formed in 2020 by Tanea Taylor, who not only founded but continues to lead the group in order to address the needs of its members. And these needs include policy changes as well as direct emergency needs of its members. They focus on informing and empowering low wealth residents, including around health equity, environmental justice, climate justice, and energy programs. And Nonprofit Accountability Group has a mailing list of over 100 members and supporters. The Nonprofit Accountability Group has been engaging in this docket. We are working with Attorney Jennings and Jameson Davis, as you heard previously, and myself to support their involvement in this docket. We've scheduled 5 workshops to educate participants on the PURA processes and communications, to educate the participants on how to engage in these processes and communications. And then we have tried to capture the recommendations for improvement based on the current processes and participants' experience. NAG selected 20 participants to be part of this first engagement, but we had 52 applicants to apply to participate. We will also be engaging with the docket around the annual affordability docket, and we'll have 25 participants in that docket. And then next are demographics. We have a multiracial group and multilingual group. We have Spanish translation in our group. 40% of our members are urban, 75% are renters, 25% live in households of 5 or more people, which I thought was remarkable. 65% are employed either part-time or full-time. About half have been unemployed in the last year. 30% identify as having a physical or mental disability. 55% receive SNAP benefits. 45% receive energy assistance. And 93% of our participants have smartphones, which shows that that can be an effective way of engaging. And at least 20% are social workers, patient navigators, or others who advise low wealth clients. They were particularly interested in trying to be part of our workshops because they wanted to be able to educate their members, just like the class social services folks are interested. So the types of recommendations that we made around social media improvement are that, we first wanted to recognize that PURA has an excellent videos on YouTube and has a good presence on YouTube. We thought that they should establish or maintain their presence on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Particularly, those are the social media that our members found most used most and found most accessible. They thought that PURA should create a link on Facebook that leads to the YouTube channel so that people can access the videos on YouTube. We also had a recommendation that they should keep the social media updated and equal across all platforms, whereas some platforms currently have outdated content. And so that was what we came up with social media recommendations. We also had suggested content for future PURA dockets. and about the programs, particularly the affordability programs. But we wanted to note that we're really not experts in PURA yet. We need another week, I think. So we don't know all of the PURA and utility activities. That's a joke. Obviously it'll take some time for us to become more familiar with the PURA and utility activities. So we may have misunderstood some of them. But we thought that there should be a docket on how to better communicate existing utility programs. We had 8 programs in mind, but for example, community education that is available currently from the utilities, that there needs to be a way of getting the word out about those resources that are currently available. Then, in addition to a docket on how to better communicate existing programs and activities, we thought that there should be a docket for suggestions of new utility affordability program activities or other communications. We're not sure whether that's possible in some of the current dockets that are out there, such as the affordability annual review of affordability programs, but or whether that needs to be included in new separate dockets. But we had a list of 16 activities in mind. An example of that is hiring temporary workers at the beginning of the enrollment period for the affordability programs, both the winter and the spring, because there is currently a backlog and people are scheduled a month or two out because of the backlog at the beginning of the sign-up period. So they were thinking that hiring temporary workers would help to address that backlog. And again, there are 15 other activities that we had in mind, 15 other recommendations that we had in mind for activities that should be included in future dockets. We also recommended 14, we had 14 recommendations for improvements to the PURA website. And so again, we will be happy to submit the full list of recommendations or happy to answer any questions that you may have about that. And then I think our last slide is another photo of some of the workshops that we've had and our member participation in that. So again, thank you for allowing us the time to present. So any questions? Or?
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Sorry, it took me a second to come back from your presentation. I really appreciate your presentation and all the work that NAG has done, the nonprofit accountability group, as well as these recommendations. Excited to dive in. I see 2 questions already, or I saw Pam's hand first, I believe. So I'm going to go to Pam to invite you to speak, and then we'll go Deb and Gannon.
If that's me, I didn't have my hand up. Pam McDonald.
Oh, okay, sorry about that, Pam. Deb?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. That was very good information. And my question is, I saw 55% of the folks were eligible for SNAP, but only 45% were getting energy assistance. And it seemed like a disconnect, because my understanding was that if you're, if you can receive SNAP, then you'd be eligible for energy assistance. So I was just wondering if you had any explanation for that, or if I'm just misinterpreting that.
Yes, so again, we're learning that that's the case. So people aren't aware that they are eligible for the affordability programs if they receive SNAP. And so that's, some of the things that we are educating our members about, informing our members about, and having them to tell other people about. But again, there are recommendations on things like this that should be communicated. And again, we have recommendations on where to go to communicate it. For example, there was a questions about immigrants and whether they're eligible for these programs and what they need to do, what they need to show in order to be for them to be eligible. And then, but we had recommendations for how to get the word out. The types of immigrant organizations that regularly are in regular communications. They don't know what kind of identification they would need to provide if they were to go to a meeting in person in New Britain, and those kinds of questions. And so working through immigrant organizations would be a way to reach people who may be eligible but not know that they're eligible.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I did see a comment from Gannon in the chat, and so I'm going to ask Gannon to verbalize that before your next comment.
Thank you. And thanks, Dr. Mitchell, for your presentation. I did have a comment about it, but just as far as SNAP and LIHEAP, we're part of the Low Income and Energy and Water Advisory Board, which helps Connecticut design its state plan for how to spend LIHEAP dollars from the federal government every year. So I've been involved in that work as well as somewhat in the working group around the SEEP application, the Connecticut Energy Assistance Program application, and whether the state is looking at whether to add the SEEP application to the regular common benefits application. So when you go to DSS, you can apply. It's like a 22-something page, application. You fill out all of your information. You give them a lot of information about yourself and your finances, and then you can and then they'll review you and they can approve you for different programs that you qualify for. So there's different complications in that. But as far as SNAP in particular, one of the things that came out in that working group, because I think Deb is right, and obviously Dr. Mitchell and NAG, the work that you all are doing to connect people to programs they're eligible for is really important. But in that particular case, what DSS explained is that SNAP is something that is defined to an individual. So it wouldn't be necessarily, so the way that they define household in the SNAP program, which is run by, I think it's like, I don't even know if it's run by the same federal agency, but so SNAP is like one person, like one person's income. I could live with roommates and I myself could be on SNAP, but my roommates wouldn't necessarily be. Whereas LIHEAP, a household, is for everyone in the household. So if you qualify for LIHEAP, that means everybody's income in your household is included. So that's, I think, why you'll see a difference in there won't be 100% overlap with those two programs, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, or people want it for some reason, no more, if people are looking more in that, I can try to connect you more to that information. But I guess my comment, and thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for your presentation, and Attorney Jennings and Jameson, the work you guys are doing is awesome. And it's great to see so many people here today, as well as at the public meeting. I really liked in particular I like the solutions you all suggested and look forward to reading more of those, but I really liked the breakdown of how you described the folks in the group, and some of those metrics I think are really important. Like we think of, race or town or gender, different kind of standard demographic information. And I just really liked the lens that you guys put on that. So I just wanted to say that, and thanks for sharing it. And I think it's something we're at Operation Fuel, we're always looking for ways to present our clients' stories in different ways and connect with different types of audiences. And, you know, if you know more about your people and more details about your people, you can reach out to them in more specific ways, and that's usually more effective. So I just really appreciated that lens. And the last thing I will say after this whole standing on this soapbox for a while, just as far as immigration status, I think that is obviously increasingly a huge concern in our state and around the country. And just as far as Operation Fuel is concerned, we don't ask people their immigration, and we don't ask people immigration status. We don't ask people for social security numbers. It's not a requirement of our programs. It's not really our business, frankly. So just if folks are out and about, or if that's something that you're hearing, I just wanted to share that as far as Operation Fuel. It's not something that we ask our clients to share what their immigration status is. And so I hope folks feel secure about that.
Great. Yeah, we are going to start digging into the affordability programs and the requirements and those kinds of things now that we've been focusing on this ease docket and the processes and recommendations on that. So yes, we will be talking to you again. Thank you for presenting to our group previously. But yes, we'll be inviting you again to participate, as well as others to help us to learn about the affordability programs.
I see Cynthia.
Hi, I just wanted to add one thing, and that was that we were discussing the possibility of one application for all, all the programs that exist, so that we can make it so people don't have to keep filling out paperwork after paperwork after paperwork. So, that's one of the things that we had started a conversation around, and hopefully we can come up with something that'll work for everyone in this process. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Love your statistics.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Cynthia is working with the NAG group as well. Other comments? Marissa, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I really appreciate the presentation. I'm looking forward to reading about the specific suggestions. I was pleased to hear that it seems like the YouTube channel and the videos that PURA staff have done are helpful. I think one thing that I struggle with is, and I think you very politely pointed this out, this staleness of some of the content. I mean, a lot of the content we've produced can be evergreen, but has not, creating new content has not been a focus of ours the past 6 months to a year in particular. So I don't know if that made its way into your recommendations, or if there is an opportunity through your further engagement in this docket to come up with a list of topics that you would like to see PURA produce videos on, and beyond that, like a platform by which we could continue to receive ideas moving into the future. I think that would be really welcome, because sometimes we can only guess at what people want to know, and I think we're often wrong. So I look forward to reading all the specific suggestions and your all's report. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Yes, we do have some specific suggestions, particularly around use of the website and around things and we certainly appreciated the newer videos by the Office of Consumer Counsel. They came out with 2 videos, I think, for this proceeding that were actually very good and very, very helpful. So it's important for us to know the links sort of between OCC, Office of Consumer Counsel, and PURA, and I think that was part of what they did. But I don't, and there probably needs to be those videos need to be on the PURA site, or there needs to be links from the PURA site to the OCC site.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell and Chairperson. Did you have a follow-up to that? Okay. Tanea.
Hello. Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Mitchell. I just wanted to highlight another component that happens during the program, doing outreach and being in communication with our participants. There's a great need for other programming things we don't cover. Folks have questions about employment opportunities, questions about their small businesses and startup and housing. So we get all types of other asks that, doesn't fall under the PURA docket. So I just want to make sure other organizations participating, they should be intersectional in their approach and know and have other resources ready for participants when they do stakeholder engagement, because it's very important that their organizations are connected to the community so they have answers when people, have issues that we didn't expect to come up.
Thanks you tonight. Can you also please introduce yourself and your affiliation for our recorder today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the founder of Nonprofit Accountability Group, or NAG, and I coordinate program and fundraise and do outreach for the organization.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Dr. Mitchell? And then Suhail, I think we'll move to our next. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell, and for all of the work of the Nonprofit Accountability Group. Your engagement on this has been really impressive, and it has honestly put a lot of wind in the sails of all of the folks doing this work, and especially our team. We've been really inspired by the engagement that you've all shown and the leadership on these issues. We are always glad to be in partnership in any way with y'all's work. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a great team. So again, thanks for inviting us to be part of this.
Absolutely. We're going to move to our third presentation today and invite one of our own from the consultant team, Lauren McNutt with Dunsky Climate and Energy, to present on our draft preliminary assessment work that we've done so far.
Hey, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone. It's been really wonderful to hear all of the work that you have been doing. I'm very happy to be able to present this on behalf of the East Consulting team. And I think what you're going to hear is some very similar themes that we heard earlier from some of the work that NEG and Europa have been doing, some of the comments for today's discussion, as well as introducing, I think, a few topics that I haven't heard yet today, but I am guessing are going to be on the top of people's mind and have been in previous conversations. So Michelle mentioned at the beginning, our first major task as part of this project was a preliminary assessment. And this involved three main activities. We did a desktop review of relevant statutes and legislation. We looked at PURA documents, dockets, written comments and testimony, and reviewed the website. We interviewed PURA staff, and then we applied our own experience and knowledge from work that we've done in other jurisdictions. And this was really foundational for all of our work going forward as part of this process, and really helped to ground our understanding in PURA's current regulatory authority, practices, procedures, culture, the constraints that they have to work within. Helped us to really identify potential participation challenges, particularly for communities that have historically and actively are underrepresented in the regulatory process, and then present potential opportunities to expand engagement. And I really want to emphasize here the word potential opportunities. This is a preliminary assessment. It is in no way intended to be interpreted as the final recommendations. These are preliminary ideas that we want to really explore more with PURA and with stakeholders to really assess their relevance and their feasibility when we think and consider the Connecticut's unique context. And then the other thing I'll just say is that, you know, we certainly recognize that these potential opportunities, they are a mix of sort of relatively easy near-term solutions, and others may require pretty significant structural, even legislative changes that certainly may not necessarily be possible or may not necessarily be possible in the near term. So just wanted you to keep those things in mind as we're presenting going forward. Next slide. So through this process, we identified 6 potential opportunities to enable more meaningful engagement in PURA's regulatory proceedings. I'm not going to read through all of these 6. I'm going to go through these in the next few slides. And you'll notice here, I've kind of called out through this call out box, opportunities 2 to 5. I just sort of want to draw your attention as I'm talking through these 6 different opportunities. We're sort of anticipating your attention, we're anticipating more comments and feedback on these 4 potential opportunities. We certainly welcome comments and questions on opportunities 1 and 6, but we expect deeper discussions on these particular opportunities a little later in the project. And I'll talk a little bit about that coming up in the next few slides. So the first potential opportunity is simply to simplify technical and legal complexity. You know, thinking back to Michelle's presentation, some of the comments that were mentioned earlier, you know, PURA is a quasi-judicial agency subject to very strict rules and procedures, many of which are prescribed by law about what PURA can and cannot do, and who can participate in proceedings and how they can participate in those proceedings. We've even heard, you know, it can be challenging for those of us who work in this space daily. You know, therefore, it is that much more challenging, confusing, and even sometimes intimidating for those who don't necessarily work in this space on a regular basis. So some potential opportunities that we've identified is to potentially reduce unnecessary procedural hurdles. One thing we always like to do is customer journey mapping. They can be a really effective tool. We've done that to some extent as part of this process. We understand, you know, the various steps to participate in a regulatory process or proceeding. We understand the touch points typically between stakeholders, participants, parties, and the public and PURA. But there is probably opportunity to go a bit deeper and really understand the customer journey in between those touch points. So what are stakeholders having to do to gather evidence, prepare and file testimony, all of those things. There may be ways to reduce or streamline processes and procedures. And there may be ways to better communicate, consolidate rules and regulations regarding participation in various proceedings. There's also, I think, potential opportunity to make the filing process more intuitive. We've heard, you know, stakeholders are interested in issues, things like solar, programs, not docket numbers. And several dockets can sometimes cover the same topic, and it's not necessarily always easy to understand which topics or which dockets cover which topics. And then lastly, there may be an opportunity to provide free independent experts really to help customers, stakeholders understand, engage, and participate in proceedings. We've seen similar services in other jurisdictions like California. So I think going forward, we really want to spend a bit more time exploring in detail what is prescribed by law that isn't necessarily easy to change versus what is sort of currently done in practice that may be easier to change. So we're going to be spending a bit more time as we engage deeper with PURA, with stakeholders, and through additional research, really to try and understand and unpack what could potentially change here. Second potential opportunity is to reduce internal structural barriers to communication. Most PURA staff are subject to ex parte rule. An ex parte rule means that commissioners, the chairperson, most offices and staff within PURA cannot engage with stakeholders. That's any party, intervener, member of the public if a matter is before or coming before them in a contested proceeding. Ex parte exists for a very important reason: to avoid any kind of inappropriate influence by anyone on PURA decisions. However, it is not well understood, and that creates potential risks. There's potential for negative stakeholder perceptions. I think from a public perception, there may be questions whether or not their efforts matter. Was I heard? Larger utilities, corporations, industry groups that must legally participate in hearings and or have greater resources may be perceived as having greater influence. So there may be opportunities here to create a consumer advisory committee that could work outside of that ex parte rule to gather stakeholder input in a much more structured way. And there may be opportunities potentially to adjust the approach to the ex parte rule. We're certainly not suggesting in any way that ex parte rule be abolished entirely, but there are alternative approaches to how other jurisdictions apply the ex parte rule. And it really does fall on a spectrum. We see ranges from very, very strict ex parte rules to others that are much more open and flexible. We've seen in other jurisdictions that apply ex parte rule only to contested cases, while they allow for much more open engagement in those that are uncontested or maybe by different proceeding types. There's the potential to expand the list of staff that are not subject to ex parte rule. Right now, there's quite a few staff and offices and units within PURA that are subject to that ex parte rule. We've seen much more flexibility in other jurisdictions of which staff, where that sort of line is drawn. And then there's other jurisdictions that allow ex parte communications early in proceedings, and then they impose this quiet period during hearings or during the final decision making. And then on that far end of that spectrum, we've seen some jurisdictions allow for ex parte communications throughout, but it is required to summarize and disclose everything on the public record. Next slide. So the third potential opportunity is to improve communications. We heard very clearly today, a few of you mentioned that many customers and stakeholders are unaware that they can even participate in the regulatory proceedings. And the fact that their interests are typically about topics and services that PURA oversees, again, not about dockets. PURA, of course, we've heard very clearly that people really do appreciate the work that is being done, the PURA 101 workshops, the videos. We know that PURA does offer this education and outreach. They have the Office of Education, Outreach, and Enforcement, where that is a place where customers can ask questions, raise concerns, receive support, and receive help to resolve inquiries. But we do know still that awareness remains low. And I think that highlights that there are opportunities to improve how PURA communicates, what they communicate, or maybe even, that outreach, who they're communicating with in those channels. So in terms of potential opportunities, we of course want and really encourage PURA to continue to offer the tools that they are delivering now. But I think there is an opportunity potentially to monitor their effectiveness and refine over time. It's one thing to count the number of workshops or the number of people who are attending, but there may be more opportunity to really go deeper and explore how effective were those workshops. What were participants' perceptions of their effectiveness? Has it elevated their understanding? Has it empowered them to be able to participate in proceedings going forward? We've heard very clearly, there were comments earlier about, providing clear instruction, transparent information about how to navigate the process, where to find information, considering diverse communication methods. Joanna earlier brought up a really wonderful idea about leveraging community liaisons, community champions, community organizations, those people who have the trust and the relationships with community members to deliver the message on behalf of PURA. There's an opportunity to develop clear, user-friendly materials. Again, I'm repeating comments that were already said, but putting things in plain language that legal technical language is sometimes so difficult for people who are not working in this space to really understand. And then potentially there's an opportunity to expand the Office of Education Outreach and Enforcement's capacity. They are a small and mighty team, but it's a small team relative to the volume of inquiries that they're getting. So maybe there's an opportunity to potentially expand their capacity to not only manage the volume of inquiries they're getting, but to be proactive and out there delivering more information about who PURA is, how to participate, what that means, and the benefits to the community members that do. So the fourth opportunity, apologies, there's a bit of a typo at the top there, but really that is to reduce time and capacity barriers to participation. There are several avenues for stakeholders to engage with PURA, but the regulatory proceedings can be lengthy. Hearings and comment periods may be scheduled at times that are difficult for people to attend. Again, we heard this earlier. Meeting times are typically held during the day. Some meetings are in person that would require some stakeholders to travel. And, if they're not close to public transit, for those that don't have their own personal vehicle, that's going to be very difficult for them to attend. We know there are some hybrid options, but not every meeting is hybrid. And for some meetings that are online, they're live streamed, so people can listen in, but it's sort of a one-way conversation. They're not able to, it doesn't allow for two-way participation. There's sometimes limited support to participate. We've heard earlier, stakeholders need maybe family care, parking validation and support, language, interpretation. Roz mentioned those who are deaf, hearing impaired, or hard of hearing. Accessibility considerations. The meeting structure can sometimes be a challenge. Meetings are typically structured to include technical presentations, and sometimes only 15 minutes are allotted for public comment. That makes it hard for customers' voices to be heard and to witness how their input is influencing a decision, and that can create some negative perceptions. And it can create, I think, or has the potential to create perceptions that regulated industries have a greater influence on decisions. We heard very clearly the website can definitely be improved. It is oftentimes deemed too technical, not easy to navigate, and it is not updated on a regular basis. And the docket system is outdated. It's challenging to find a docket, to find information, submit comments, testimony, and files. So I think, again, I'm repeating some of the things that we already heard today, potential opportunities, schedule evening hearings, when people can participate outside of the work hours, the potential for offering childcare, parking, transit reimbursement, food, developing service standards, making sure that for every meeting that involves stakeholders, the public, that we're really thinking ahead about the support and the accommodations that are needed, making this part of the standard process and procedure. Providing multilingual resources, alternative formats like videos, of course, reorganizing, maintaining the website, and then updating the filing system. The fifth potential opportunity is to reduce financial and resource barriers. There are costs and resources associated with participation in proceedings. There's costs associated with hiring lawyers, consultants, subject matter experts, everything that's needed to build the evidence. Individuals, nonprofit organizations, small business, Roz mentioned this in her presentation, lack the time, sometimes that deep understanding and knowledge of the subject matter, and the resources in order to effectively participate. PURA certainly recognizes this. Jameson mentioned the stakeholder compensation program earlier. I want to draw your attention to the right-hand side of the screen. The stakeholder compensation program was implemented in 2024, so it's only a little over a year old. There's up to $1.2 million annually available to groups who represent residential customers who live in environmental justice communities that experience hardship, small business customers, nonprofits. The first year, we didn't see all that funding available allocated, but it's a new program. Awareness is growing. People are becoming more familiar with it. We're expecting participation to grow. We've already seen here in the first quarter of 2025, half of what was awarded last year already being reserved. So we anticipate that to grow. But there are opportunities, and we want to keep that in mind with this program. By law, PURA has to evaluate this program, and there's some set rules and criteria around how that is evaluated, what has to be evaluated and reported on. But there are opportunities to make sure that there is effective evaluation. Things like planning evaluation upfront and early on to make sure that PURA is dedicating the resources that are needed and collecting the right data to help facilitate evaluation at the end. And to collect data and feedback on a regular basis to assess the program effectiveness. And that will allow PURA to really understand how it's working in near real time, and to be able to pivot if needed, rather than waiting for the evaluation to sort of make any changes if necessary. And then I've mentioned this before. I think, again, there's a real opportunity here potentially to have free experts to really help participants participate in proceedings. And then the last opportunity is to enhance impact by measuring outcomes, not just outputs. PURA does currently report quarterly and annually on regulatory activities, but the metrics do tend to be what we call output-based metrics, counting the number of dockets that have been opened and closed, the number of decisions that have been made, the number of meetings, hearings, or workshops that have been held, the number of customer complaints addressed. These are important to track, and they are often easier to track, but they don't necessarily measure the effectiveness of PURA's actions and efforts. We see potential opportunity to measure and capture key outcomes that are going to be really important to measure the success and the progress of the ease docket. So that starts really with clearly defining goals and the desired end state. What are we really trying to achieve through this ease docket? Being clear, not only within PURA, but to those external. Expanding and adding those output-based metrics. So not just counting the number of participants, but who is and who is not participating in some of these activities. The number of stakeholders that are engaged from priority communities, those have historically been underrepresented in regulatory proceedings. And then what we would suggest is adding outcome-based metrics. So these would be things that would be looking at perceptions of the quality of the engagements and whether programs and engagements provided the sufficient support to empower and better enable participation in proceedings. Once we're not going to really define what those metrics should be at this point. We really need to do is narrow down the ease strategy recommendations, and then we can recommend the key metrics that PURA should track to monitor their progress and the impact that ease is having. So that's a lot. In terms of next steps, again, the preliminary assessment was our first major task, and this is really going to help guide stakeholder engagement that is already underway, and it's going to continue over the next couple of months. It's going to inform where we need to do a bit of additional research and assessment. And then all of that will culminate in the final recommendations in the ease engagement strategy, all of which will consider stakeholder input, the Connecticut context, and what recommendations are feasible and relevant to Connecticut. And I'll end there.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And first we'll invite any questions for Lauren on that presentation, but then we will also open it up to general discussion across all three presentations and any other topics that folks want to discuss. Questions for Lauren? And I do see some questions in the chat and comments, and I'm just going to verbalize some of these. First, there's some links in the chat from Connecticut OCC. Looks like there's some videos there. I think folks have been excited to know more about that, and there's more videos coming soon. Thank you so much, Paula. Appreciate your intro as well. Also a note from Gannon with Operation Fuel, just plus oneing the idea of mapping the customer journey. And thank you for a reference to a report. We look forward to taking a look at that. And any other, if you know of any other reports like that, that really look at the customer perspective and experience related to peer regulation and programs, please do send that our way, and we'll put our email address that you can send it to the whole team here. And then Royal, did you want to share your comment verbally as well as in the chat? If not, I'm happy to verbalize. Yeah, thank you for the just mentioning that it looks like the potential opportunities are measuring whether people participate with PURA and perhaps suggesting a measure of whether PURA decisions support the community as compared with industry is needed. That's a tough one, but we'll take that challenge on and think about different ways that we might have seen other commissions look at, just trying to get a sense of whether or not, at least the perception is that folks feel like that is a comprehensively considered decision.
Yeah, I think one thing I didn't mention, on those metrics, I had a colleague say to me one time, if they're easy to measure, they're probably output based. If they're difficult to measure, they're outcome based. And those outcome based metrics are really important, but they can also be the most challenging. So, we'll try to balance those recommendations in the final metrics to make sure that we have this sort of nice balance of recognizing sometimes you can't evaluate or measure it all, but really what are the most important metrics to be measuring?
Mm-hmm. Chair Gillette, please.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to weigh in on the comment we just received, which I love. I am a mother of 8-year-old twins, and my son who's on the spectrum constantly, he's obsessed with a phrase now where he says, "You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. No offenses, Mom. You're not listening to me." And I take multiple offenses to that apparently, but there's obviously the difference between being heard and being listened to. And I think one of the things that's challenging with PURA decisions and, trying to articulate some of the legal framework in which we have to operate and balance different interests. I'd love to think through how we can capture like that difference between being listened to and heard. And I think we've tried to do that unsuccessfully, probably in some of our decisions recently by recapping public comment, not characterizing it, but trying to convey like we hear you and we listen to you, and we're reflecting that in our decisions. But I would love to keep thinking about like how we could measure that, and recognizing that we will never be able to get away from the legal obligations of making a decision based on the evidence, and having to preserve the legal rights of the industries that we regulate. So I love the idea. I'd like to put some work into that.
Thank you, Chairman. And I have made a note, our team will be curious to look at how maybe some other commissions navigate that, because it's both about the actual impact, it's also about the perception, which I know is a big part of leading a commission as well, making sure folks really, they see the impact and experience the impact, but also just like, yeah, I do feel like there's an opportunity here, and I perceive that if I do show up, I know where I can see where that is influencing decisions, and that is hard. So we will certainly look at different ways to support that. Other questions, thoughts, comments on Lauren's presentation? All right. right, we'll continue to take any more questions on Lauren's presentation, but I'm going to open it up just more generally for any other thoughts, comments, questions, ideas. Our team is going to be moving. We're going to still go back and like check a couple more things about our own understanding about PURA because we want to really make sure we understand that. But we're also going to begin to look more into like what are some of the strategies that seem to make the most sense? Which ones do we hear would be the most impactful? Which ones feel within reach, or even if it's a small stretch within reach by PURA and staff. But yeah, any other thoughts, questions? And I believe Suhaila put our email into the chat. We'd love to hear from you, either by email if you have thoughts, questions, or to set up some time to talk with us. I see Iris. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm Iris Ortiz Sanchez, and I'm part of the NAG workshop. And I just wanted to ask a question that I never really, I guess, focused on. And thank you for the presentation that made it clear to me that you guys are also, PURA is also responsible for the water pipes and making sure everything is safe and environmentally correct. With that being said, wanted to ask how involved or is there any involvement at all with the water pipes flooding and breaking down, etc., in the north end of Hartford, if there's any engagement there?
We might have to see if staff or Commissioner wants to answer that.
Thank you so much for the question. PURA specifically regulates the water utilities that are owned by investors. So like Aquarion, Connecticut Water, there's a few smaller ones. So I am generally familiar with the issue that you're mentioning because I think I've read about it in the current, but I don't off the top of my head recall whether you're served by a utility that we regulate. So I'd be happy to put our customer call center number into the chat so we can follow up. It looks like some people might know the answer. Shannon.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Chair Gillette. I think you're talking about MDC, which unfortunately is not regulated by PURA. However, there is, and I think we have Paula on the call today from OCC. I know OCC has a consumer advocate that works specifically with MDC clients. And we have a meeting with that person. We're going to connect with them, I think, and I don't know, it's coming up in the next week or two, but that would be somebody that maybe Paula, if you could share contact, or I'm not sure how you guys distribute that, but if folks are looking to talk about MDC, I think that person might be a resource just because they're not regulated. They have a kind of a unique structure of how they're governed. I think they're actually a nonprofit. But anyway, I think her name is Liz Tavelli. So that would be possibly one area to follow up on, in addition to what Chair Gillette said.
Thank you, Gannon. Thank you, Chair Gillette. Other questions, thoughts, comments? As folks are gathering thoughts, feel free to raise your hand. I'm just going to do a quick, go ahead, Pam.
Well, thank you. Just a couple of thoughts from the perspective of someone who doesn't really know a lot. Like I'm showing up. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I did some testimony in front of a commission in Hartford, and I sat there for a long time waiting for my turn to speak, right? And I was hearing all of these people give testimony, and I thought, my testimony isn't anything like what I'm hearing. I'm probably not doing this right. And I was very tempted to tone down what I was going to say and sort of match up what I was hearing from everybody else. But what I realized, and especially as I stuck to what I intended to say in spite of it, and I got a reaction from the folks that were listening to me like, oh my gosh, I've never heard this before. I learned that my personal view and my personal experience actually was more important than just piling on with what everybody else was saying. So, oh my gosh, that was a huge learning for me. So I just wanted to put that in there and sort of remind you all that folks who aren't used to navigating all of this might be intimidated about going whole hog, authentically to our personal experience. So that's the one point. And then the other thing is the videos on Facebook, I was sort of scrolling through them as people were talking, are great, but they're long. And I'm not, if I'm new to this whole thing, I'm probably not going to watch the whole thing unless I know that it's going to matter to listen to the whole thing. So something short that lets people know how important it is for them to clue themselves in and how they actually can be empowered. Something really short, like a minute or something, that explains how important it is to get feedback from individual people. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot to say when we make a video about commission processes, but we can certainly explore different ways to break down, whether it's chapters or creating series. Yeah. And I know you that experience, Pam, because I started watching those videos so that I could learn about PURA. And it's all very helpful, but it does take a while to get through all the content. Thank you. And I also just want to really appreciate you sharing your story about providing testimony. I think that was very powerful. And I know that these spaces do tend to attract the very technical, the well-resourced utility and consultant types. And at the end of the day, we talk a lot with commissioners and their staff about just the real need to hear directly from customers and ratepayers about what their experience is. And you're right, you have incredible expertise from your experience that is dearly needed in these discussions and conversations and decisions. So thank you for sharing your story. I want to just do a quick, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to know if PURA actually test water, like the water from your house, if they could actually test it to see if the pipes need to get changed or whatnot.
That's a great question. I believe the answer is no. We share jurisdiction over the water industry with some of our sister agencies like the Department of Public Health and the Department of Energy Environmental Protection. So my first reaction is that a water quality issue is likely more in the jurisdiction of the Department of Public Health. But again, we can look into that further.
Yeah, because where I live at, technically, I would drink a lot more water than soda and stuff. And usually, if I don't let the water run for like good 15 minutes or so, if I use the cup right away, technically it's gonna taste like pipe water.
Thank you, Maria. Maria, can you also introduce yourself for our recorder today?
Oh yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, my name is Maria Sostre, and I'm also from the program. Was it SAG? I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the program. But yeah, we actually spoke a lot about PURA, and I was interested about that. How can a person go about having the city to come into their house and test the water?
Thank you, Maria. Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, if I can answer that. The water companies are required to test a certain number So if you're in the Hartford area, you can call MDC and ask them to come out and test from your tap. Um, uh, yeah, so, but again, PURA does not regulate MDC.
Okay, thank you.
And I also want to just elevate seeing your face pop up, Dr. Mitchell. You had a great comment in the chat just about the newsletter, but that I think that there's improvements to be made there. Do you want to verbalize any of that at this time?
Yes, I said that the newsletter was really good. It's very helpful to learn to figure out the docket numbers, what the subjects are, and what PURA covers. However, it's hard to find the newsletters on the website. And so we had a couple of recommendations about having links to the media page, to the page with the newsletters, and then also, having a sort of new to PURA, this is where you start, and having the newsletters as part of and videos as part of that for people who are new to PURA and new to the PURA website.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. We'll continue to stay open for questions, comments. I want to just recap a little bit of the journey that we've been on with our presentations. We heard from Roz at Europa talking about just that in the research that she and her group did and the survey, that it's really cool to see that folks are interested and they want to engage. And in many ways, they're ready to if they only knew how to. And then even just in the survey, it was an educational tool of like, oh, there are public meetings. I had no idea. And I think that is a really great opportunity available. And then I also just appreciated ways to think about the time barrier, having meetings after work, having meetings at different times of the day, and perhaps having asynchronous ways for folks to participate through the videos. We're doing this as a live stream. I imagine that it will be available as a recording. So I think there's lots of different ways to approach accessibility of these types of discussions. We then heard from Dr. Mitchell with the Nonprofit Accountability Group. And the messages that I really overheard really kind of took away was just meeting people where they're at, recognizing the different perspectives, the different challenges they may have in accessing these conversations, and that there's an opportunity for PURA to further break down existing programs, its communication, some of the technical material. Folks are very interested in those programs, and I think it's just the content can make it hard to sometimes get to the heart of it. And also just loved the recommendations on opening certain conversations or proceedings on affordability and looking at program access and different challenges there. We heard then from Lauren on a number of items, sometimes echoing what we heard from Roz and Dr. Mitchell, but also getting into some of the organizational kind of rules and different barriers that are showing up there. And there will be perhaps some limited wiggle room on those, but to the extent that there is room in kind of the implementation of kind of the laws on process to make it more accessible, we look forward to partnering with PURA and exploring that and working with all of you to really prioritize where those real pinch points might be. So any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Hi, this is Paula from the OCC. Sorry, I couldn't find the raised hand function quickly enough, but I just wanted to note from the chat that we included the link for what Gannon had mentioned, the MDC Consumer Advocate, Elizabeth Tavelli, and also just thank you all the presenters. Like the presenters were wonderful, and for the consultant team, like this was a really great technical meeting, so I really appreciate it. And I wanted to ask, in terms of like the resources that we might like share in the comments or questions, do those also get, do they like enter the docket? Are those also kind of part of like the slideshows that are recorded for future reference? Thanks.
That's a great question, Paula. Oh, Danielle, go for it.
Yeah, we'll post all of the presentations from today as well as a copy of the chat and the transcript as well to the docket. So it'll be a part of the record.
And
ahead.
okay. And we're also creating meeting overviews. We did one for public meeting number 1, and I will be creating one for this technical meeting. And those will be included in the the equity, accessibility, and stakeholder engagement strategy that the consultant team will be creating. And that entire package will also be put into the docket. So that would include some of the links as well.
And I see Royal. Go ahead and please introduce yourself. Go ahead, Royal.
Oh, hi, sorry. I don't know if you want to get into this today, but I've heard several things about changing just how the nature of PURA, changing its definition from currently to something new.
Me the invite for 3. Okay, all
So-
right. Yeah.
And I haven't quite understood what the implication is, but it sounds to me like it's taking some power away from PURA and distributing it sort of between the companies that you regulate and the rest of the government. And have I misunderstood that, or does somebody want to speak to what that suggestion is? And how likely is it to happen?
I think I don't know if that's a different conversation, but this particular conversation is just looking at the existing way in which parties or interveners provide information, testimony, and data on the record through formal commission processes for decision making, and just making sure that we're not getting in the way of hearing from a broader set of perspectives that would help provide perhaps better decision making on the part of the commission. As we mentioned at the beginning in the presentation, and we're happy to share out the slides again so folks have that, there tend to be a lot of rules, not just at PURA, but in commissions across the country. There are numerous rules and layers of requirements to get involved and be not just listened to, but heard in decision making. And PURA is really interested in making sure that they're not unduly, excluding voices that are really helpful in that decision making process. I would not characterize it as distributing power in a different way amongst utilities. I think this is more about, PURA maintains its existing authority and responsibilities. If anything, it's taking on a greater responsibility to hear from a broader set of perspectives that are critical to doing proper decision making for the utilities in Connecticut. But I invite Chair Gillette, I see you're off mute, to add to that.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you so much for that. And hi, Royal, thank you for being here. My guess is, and with apologies to our excellent consulting team, because I think this is a current political environment question. My guess is that the question is more around news reports about suggestions that PURA might be reconstituted as a different type of agency. And that's, to Michelle's point, certainly not what we're exploring through this proceeding. This proceeding's focused on what we can do within our existing jurisdiction. And if the legislature wants to reconstitute PURA in some other form, that would have to happen down in Hartford, and is not something that PURA would be doing in this docket or like on our own. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I realize it's off topic.
No apology needed. There's a lot of issues swirling, and all of it is tied together and a little complicated. Great. I'm seeing a lot of appreciations for our presentations. The facilitation team will stay on for, another few more minutes here. If there's any other thoughts or questions, or you want to connect with us. But otherwise, I sense a natural wrapping up of the conversation, and I want to just appreciate and thank Roz from Europa, Dr. Mitchell from the Nonprofit Accountability Group, and Lauren McNabb from our consultant team. I want to thank all of the PURA staff, Danielle, Julia, and Elizabeth, and of course to have Chair Gillette here has been really wonderful. Thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy days. I know this is a long meeting. It covers a lot of material, but your engagement is so appreciated. And we have taken it all in, and we look forward to turning this into something that gives PURA an opportunity to hopefully open up the discussion even more. So thank you. We have some next steps. I'll pass it over to Suhaila to take us home.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Before folks leave today, we would love to invite you to our next 2 meetings. So we have a public meeting on May 13th at 6 p.m. We don't have a specific location yet, but it will be in the New Haven area. We also have another technical meeting. This will be on June 24th. It'll be at the same time, 12:30 p.m. and on Zoom. We will be releasing updates and the plans and agendas for those 2 meetings later on and through the proceeding. We also are open to what Michelle just mentioned, to talk to y'all and to schedule either one-on-one or small group discussions. Please reach out. We have included our email at the bottom here. And for those who prefer, that email is EASE-team, TEAM at common-spark.com. And you can also reach us through engagepura.org. And that website has a lot of information about this EASE docket, as well as information about these 2 upcoming meetings. Michelle, back over to you.
And if we go, is that our last slide, Suhaila? Okay, well, that's it. Thank you all again so much. You know how to reach us. We really hope to hear from you. Our team is ready to dive in with you. This is a good time for us to get into the details. So please reach out. And otherwise, we hope to see you again in May. And in the meantime, I hope that spring treats you well, and that if you're doing any traveling for May, that it goes safely and without event. Thank you so much.